Hi, I'm Dave, the maker of Basket of Deplorables, the board game. And I'm just a regular laid-back California type. This is my lovely wife, Amy. She has stood by me like a saint throughout this entire process while I've obsessively worked on this game 24/7 to bring this game to you. I'm a left-leaning Bernie Sanders type liberal, sort of progressive. And you can imagine that I was horribly disappointed when Donald Trump won the election. I was actually very devastated. I could barely get out of bed for about 3 days. I was so depressed. But then it dawned on me, I should make a board game out of this. And ever since then, I've been completely on fire, totally inspired about this game. And here I am bringing it to you. So let's talk about the game. We've had 3 gameplay test parties so far, and each one of those has enabled me to improve the game quite a bit based on the feedback of the players. Everyone tells me the game is super fun, it's hilarious, it's educational, it's cathartic, but it is partially a roll and move game. And I know that is retro. However, there are lots of new elements that make it exciting and fresh, such as a lot of campaign trivia that's in the game, a lot of politics and election knowledge that comes into play. There are the debates, which allow you to improvise and have a lot of fun with that. And then there are certain strategic choice points in the game, such as whether to run as an independent or to endorse the nominee and other such decisions that make the game what it is. So let's take a look at the board that we're going to play on, and these are the player pieces, and I know this is just a piece of paper, but these pieces will be rendered in plastic in 3-dimensional, and they will be the pieces that go down the campaign trail on the board. But the game first starts off with phase 1, which is the ritual of the deplorables. And in that ritual, all the deplorables are spread out on the board. The deplorables are slightly larger than these paper versions, actually. They're cardboard punch-outs of the members of Trump's inner circle. And they're spread out along the board, and the first player will pull a deplorable card. And they will read a portion of that card to the next player. Now that player has a decision whether they want to do the easy version or the hard version. And this allows people that have less political experience and less knowledge in this area to compete with those who are political junkies like me. So this is just sort of equalizing the playing field a little bit. If you pick the easy version, you'll be read the entire card. And if you pick the hard version, you'll just be read one sentence based on what die roll you get. So let's say you roll a 6. The person would read, "Nominating this deplorable to head the Department of Education is proof that Trump wasn't lying when he said, 'I love the poorly educated.'" So if that person was savvy enough to pick Betsy DeVos as that deplorable, then she would take that deplorable and put it in her basket. If not, she would cast it into the swamp. The swamp is the portion of the board where the deplorables live when they're not in another player's basket. So speaking of the baskets, I originally intended this game to have 4 3D plastic baskets with 6 slots in each one to hold up to 6 deplorables. That is a very expensive game part to manufacture, I've learned, and so I can only do that if I reach the $55,000 stretch goal, which I really do hope that I make, because that's what the original intent of the game would be, made at that level. When you go down the campaign trail, there are various things that can happen. One of them is debates. When you land on a space that's already occupied by another player, then a debate happens. And in a debate, one of the other players who's not on the square becomes the moderator and asks the players on the square a question, anything that they want. They make it up. It could be a totally halfway realistic question like, who would you rather see finish out Trump's first term, Trump or Pence? Or it could be a completely absurd question like, what is Trump's spirit animal? So people have a lot of fun with this. It's a super fun part of the game. Everyone loves the debates. Next, I want to talk about the campaign cards, which is when you land on one of these starred spaces, you pull a campaign card. And there are 4 different subtypes of campaign cards. This is a campaign type of campaign card, and it tests your political knowledge from the perspective of the player that you're actually playing. So, for instance, in this one it says, if you contributed to the effort to impeach Richard Nixon, take another turn. And it's Hillary Clinton that contributed to the effort to impeach Nixon, so if the person who is playing Hillary Clinton had picked that card, they would get another turn. Next, there are trivia type campaign cards. An example of that is, name as many Republicans who ran in the 2016 primary as you can. If the player to your right can name 2 Republican primary candidates that you missed, give them 1 deplorable. If they can't, take 1 deplorable from them. Next, we have the deplorables type campaign cards. And an example of that is, if your basket currently contains a deplorable who worked for Goldman Sachs, then cast it into the swamp. And those who know would know that both Steve Bannon and Steve Mnuchin have worked for Goldman Sachs. So if you have one of those Steves in your basket and you pull that card, you're going to have to cast that deplorable into the swamp. Finally, there are the redistribute type campaign cards, and these say, redistribute the wealth. The player with the most deplorables casts 1 deplorable into the swamp. The player with the least deplorables drains the swamp of 1 deplorable. So those are the campaign cards. There's 80 of them. And then if you land on one of these spaces, which are the scandal spaces, then you pull a scandal card. And the scandal cards all begin with a prompt such as, WikiLeaks releases your porn viewing habits. And then your response to that scandal is determined by the roll of the dice. So say you rolled a 1. Your unfortunate response, no gerbils were actually heard in those films, becomes a new campaign slogan on thousands of Facebook memes. Cast 1 deplorable into the swamp. So that's an example of the scandal card. They're all sort of funny and salacious like that. Great fun for people playing the game. Another element of the game are the primary and caucus elections, and this is where the elections take place in the game. The candidates compete against each other. The formula for those elections is in the rule book. I'm not going to break it down right now, but that's a fun part of the game. And when you get to the later stages of the game, you have some choices whether you want to, for instance, go down endorsement alley, where you will seek endorsements from prominent organizations and individuals that can help give you an edge over your candidates, over your competing candidates. Or you can go down pollster passage, and people who follow polls will really like this because this lists all the polling agencies and the number that they were actually off in their polling from 2016 versus the actual results. Finally, when you get to Super Tuesday, this is the space that determines the nomination for the Democratic Party candidate in the election. And in order to get past Super Tuesday, you need some deplorables in your basket, because the formula for Super Tuesday is that the first person who arrives gets 1 point. Then you add the deplorables in your basket to your die roll. It must equal at least 7 in order to pass, but the highest total beyond 7 is the winner of the Democratic nomination. Now, all the other players now get a choice. They either run as an independent, but that's going to cost them 2 deplorables cast into the swamp as a filing fee, or they can give 1 deplorable to the nominee or to a player running as an independent, thereby endorsing that candidate and becoming their running mate. And so then the endorsed candidate and the endorser are a team, and they move down the last phase of the campaign trail to Election Day 2020, where you get to take on Trump, defeat him, and flick him off of the board with your middle finger. You need deplorables again in your basket for this, and this time you need a total of 8. So if no player gets at least 8, unfortunately Trump wins re-election and gets another 4 years as president. But that's not going to happen because you're going to win this game. As a matter of fact, in most of the game tests, for some reason, Elizabeth Warren won a lot of the games. So perhaps that's an omen for what's to come. Now, 10% of the profit from this game is going to be donated to organizations that work to push back against the Trump agenda, as well as to protect the vulnerable against this rising tide of hate crimes that's happening in the wake of the Trump election. So not only will you be having a great time playing a game, so thank you very much for watching this video, for coming by this Kickstarter page, and for hopefully becoming a backer. With your help, we can make this one of the best political games ever made. Thanks.